So talk me through how you got started with Tring Corinthians in 2024. How did that job kind of come to you?
It was a bit of an interesting story, actually. I'd been coaching at Watford in the doing the developments pathway stuff, and I decided that I wanted to make that step into management. And I literally just tweeted to say, thinking about going into management. If there's any teams looking, let me know, sort of thing. And it was just literally a shot in the dark. And within 10 minutes, I had a call from Andrew at Tring, or a message from Andrew at Tring, and then we had a call quickly. And yeah, it was just perfect timing. He'd literally pretty much at the same time as he had posted saying we're looking for a reserve manager. So I went and met obviously Martin and Andrew, who were the joint managers, and Gary, who was the chairman. And yeah, it was a really nice place for me to take that first step into management.
Did they make it quite a straightforward process for you? Obviously, calling you 10 minutes after putting out a tweet, did they make it relatively straightforward?
Well, I mean, obviously, Gary, who's sadly no longer with us, he's basically Mr. Tring Corinthians. He'd been the chairman for many, many years, and he knew football in that area, in that location, and that level inside out, basically. And Martin and Andrew had both been at the club a couple of seasons, and so it was a very stable club. Everything was there ready to step into, basically. So yeah, it definitely made it easy, and the fact that everyone at the club, from Stephen, who's the chairman, all the way down, are just good people. So yeah, it was a very easy place to join and get involved.
What were you kind of told about the pathway at Tring Corinthians?
I knew that so Tring Corinthians, I'm not sure everyone knows this, is part of a group of clubs within Tring. So Tring Corinthians is the adult pathway, and then Tring Tornadoes are the youth setup. So I knew that there was a link there. During that season, working with Stephen and Chris Jurasek, who were doing the under-18s, we would look to get those involved. So I knew that there was a pathway there. There were obviously existing players in the under-23s, and Gary, the chairman, so my target for the season when I came in was to get promoted. So it was quite a big target for a first season in management, but quite early it was obvious that we had a good group of players, and if we could work well as a team, then we'd have a successful season. So yeah, but Tring Corinthians got big plans. They've been building pitches. They've got an Astro incoming. It's a growing football club. So yeah, there's a good future there.
What did you expect from the level of football then? Obviously, going into the Hearts County League, did you kind of have a rough idea of what you were looking at ability-wise?
I mean, I knew that it was obviously, I think it was Division 4 or 5. I can't remember. I think it might be 5. It was lower down in the Hearts County. It would be a mix of young players. There'd be older players, experienced players, and it would probably be quite physical. So I think, obviously every reserve team is different, but in general, you're looking to give players experience, to get them as much match experience as possible, and prepare them for a first team. So there were players at the club that had featured for the first team in a few games here and there, and those players were integral to our first season at Tring. And every squad develops over the season. I'm pretty sure if I looked at the first team that I put out on week 1 versus the team that finished the season, there'd probably be a few different players, but there'd be a core of lads that were there through the season that helped us to be successful.
Yeah, what was the start? Obviously, you say it was going to be quite a physical division. You knew that going into it. Did you try and maybe adapt your style of play around that at all, or did you have quite a fixed way of playing that you wanted to use no matter the circumstance?
Um, I think there's every team lots of people talk about styles and philosophies and all those things, but I think you have to try and play a style of football that suits where you are at. And if we're in Division 5 in the Hearts County, we're probably not playing on the smoothest pitches. So sometimes we'd have to adjust a little bit for weather and conditions and things like that. But in general, we were trying to get the ball down and play where we could. But you have to play to your players' strengths as well. So sometimes you might have a stronger player up front. We can play hold up. Sometimes we might have a fast player up front. We can play in behind. And I think if you can get your players to be adaptable like that and can learn to win in multiple ways, then you've got a more well-rounded player anyway, rather than just having one distinct style of play, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Did you find it hard to maybe recruit players at that level as well? Obviously, it's a very difficult kind of league to try and keep players in with the lower down county leagues. Players are moving all the time. Did you find it hard to recruit as well?
I was really fortunate in that, I say Andrew and Martin in the first team had been established for a while, so they had a good network and they were helpful in helping to get players to come into the team. I had a few contacts myself, so I'd get people that would come in, and Chris Jurasek, who I mentioned earlier, who was working with the under-18s, is a well-known name around the local league scene. He knows a lot of players, he watches a lot of football, and he was very helpful as well in terms of recommending players here and there. So look, I think every single football player wants to play as high as they can, but it's for some players they just need experience, and trying to be a step 4 footballer when it's your first season of football and maybe you need to play a bit lower is probably the right thing. All of those conversations have to be had with players. Some of them listen and some of them don't, and eventually everyone finds the right level. It just depends how long it takes them to work it out.
Yeah. Did you have any kind of personal, obviously you said earlier, first season in management, what were your personal targets going into it, from your own personal development point of view?
I would say, I think, so I'd been coaching, I'd been like an assistant coach at Coney Heath. I'd been assistant coach at FC Romania and Brisbane Rangers. So I'd been around sort of step 5 teams as a coach. So I think I don't really set myself targets to say, I want to achieve this or whatever, but I'm, as a coach, I'm always looking to learn and develop. And I think the step into management for me was about understanding more player management and those player relationships and how to motivate people, that maybe as a coach you don't always get those opportunities to have those discussions and deal with people in that way. So it was probably more that area of development for me as a manager rather than a personal target or something like that.
Yeah. So obviously you had a really successful first season in management, coming second in that division and getting promoted. Where do you, obviously it's kind of a almost silly thing to say in a way, but where do you think you could have improved on certain things throughout that season?
Well, I mean, that season we were the top scorers. We conceded the least, but we still finished second. So there's games that I look back on and really think we should have won that game. But sometimes there are games of football where you feel like you've done everything right and somehow you haven't put the ball in the net, or somehow you've conceded a silly goal, and ultimately. As a team, you make mistakes and you try and improve things. But there was, for me, the group of players that we had in the reserves at Corries was, it was a great spirit across the club, involvement with the first team, and the boys all knew each other and there was friendship groups across them. So it was a very strong team spirit. And I think it was just getting those guys to play with confidence and believe in themselves. And if I look back at that season, I think that there are kids that have gone and played higher and pushed on from that season. So there's some really good stories of players that came in and experienced things. Would I change anything about that season? Maybe the £100 it cost me in a taxi on the way home after celebrating the getting promoted, but that's probably it.
Do you think that Tring team would have been equally as successful two or three divisions above in the Hearts County League, or maybe even at Step 7?
I don't think that team would have been ready to go into Step 7 straight away. There were definitely players in that team that were capable, but not the whole. If we'd taken that whole squad and tried to play Step 7, then we would have. I'm not saying we wouldn't have won games, but we would have had a much more difficult season. There were players that I think, like, we had Kenzo Kanate, who played 3 games for me. Then he went and played for the first team, and now he's at Aylesbury Vale. I think he was Player of the Year or Manager's Player of the Year for Aylesbury Vale this year. So that can be the progression. He was willing to come and play for me to get some experience. It was very obvious that he was a standout player for us. He quickly made it into the first team, and by the end of the season, he progressed to Step 5. So, from playing Hearts Division 5 at the beginning of one season, he was a Step 5 player the next season. So, the progress, can be made at varying levels of success, and everyone's developing at different rates and different times. I think, to answer your question, we definitely weren't a Step 7 football team, but there were definitely players there that were capable of playing higher.